Why, hello, everybody. This is BalorMage, and I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an update on what I've been doing and go over the cheapest, good-feeling, speedy MFer that I could come up with. We had a look at how everybody was doing it. We took ideas from a lot of different places. I've seen ones with budgets smaller than this, but they are horrible to run and they die constantly and they feel bad. And this has been the best one I've come up with. This is around 8 exalts from head to toe, including buying all of the gems. And it is custom built to run tier 3 burial chambers at speed. Now, you might be saying, but 8x from head to toe, Baylor, but I see inspired learnings in the background. I see little inspired learning buffs. Yes, I bought both of those over the course of the second afternoon of the stream from the profits that I made running tier 3 towers without them in. There was just abyssal jewels in those sockets until I got inspired learnings. So inspired learnings at the time of recording this, or at the time of buying it, were 6x a piece, and I made enough to buy 2 of those basically just today, as well as I have, I think, 2 leftover nurse cards on top of spending that 12x. So that took a total of about, I want to say, 6 hours of farming these. Right. So, moving into in-game to have a look at the path of building and the in-game stuff that I did. Right. So, my original setup actually cost more than this. It cost about 12x, and I had an entire cluster jewel set up out here. And I ended up dropping that cluster jewel in favor of coming all the way over here and getting all of this nonsense over here. So the reason for that is I've seen a lot of builds that stop here and they anoint this node, which is a really nice node. It gets you the onslaught. It's like the only way you can get onslaught without, unless you waste a flask slot on an onslaught flask, but we don't want to do that. However, it does only give you 30% increased effective onslaught, and that's all you get is onslaught. And so those people that anoint that also travel across the bottom here to come in here and get their inspired learning slot from the bottom. And I looked at it, and it was honestly not that many extra points. I think it was like 1 extra point plus these nodes, which are actually good, plus I get to take a leech and a mana leech on the way. So it was like 1 extra travel node, but then there was extra stuff for me to get. So I ended up pathing here myself, taking all 3 of those because those are 15% increased effective onslaught each. So they're really nice. That's another 30% increased effect of my onslaught. That's really nice. I got some generic leech to go with my life gain on hit. Now, I could also probably not take the leech and be fine. I could also probably not take the life on hit and be fine. Having both of them is probably overkill, but the build being as squishy as it was, having good, fast recovery for the few times I do get hit, felt pretty important. After playing it for a day, I decided it was good that I wanted both of those things. So we traveled over here, we got our inspired learning, we chucked it in here, and when we didn't have the inspired learning, we did not take this this endurance charge, and we didn't need these points either, although I did end up having them just because of my level, and I just put them in there preemptively, but we wouldn't have needed them either. But we still would have come over here and got cloth and chain and the frenzy charge. Cloth and chain helped quite a lot with our resistances. Resistances are quite difficult to get. So, skills. We've got basically just lightning arrow. That's all I've got. I've got a sniper's mark in case I encounter things like Abaxoth. I will chuck a sniper's mark on Abaxoth. That's about it. I did not keep a single target setup. A lot of people have a clear setup and a single target setup in their chest. We are farming tier 3 towers. If you need a single target setup, you've done something wrong. But what you should have is 6 more slots to level gems. That is just free money. There should also be gems leveling in these extra slots too, but don't worry about that. So this is the tree. This is everything I did with it. It is 8x from head to toe. Let me tell you what I did to keep the price down. I'll tell you what the important parts are and then where you can skimp to try and save money. So, important parts, things you do not want to try and save money on, right? Is getting yourself a Wind Ripper bow with a decent amount of damage and a decent amount of critical strike chance on it with a Krangle that has flat damage. We don't care what type. Fire, cold, lightning, doesn't matter. We do care about the downside. It can't be something that really matters. It can't be deal no cold damage or deal no lightning damage, or it can be deal no physical damage. It can be deal no chaos damage. It can be minus res, although that would make it more difficult. But this is one of the areas where you do have to spend money. This one did cost me, I think it was 2.2x. I saved a little bit by getting added fire instead of the cold or lightning, but it honestly does not matter which kind we get. Right, we can save also a little bit more money by not having fantastic Venter's Gambles. So you can actually see now that I've changed my tree over here, I could actually replace this Venter's, but I wasn't going to invest any more into it because we don't need very much more lightning res, so I would be able to get a better one. But Venter's Gambles, to start cheap, try and get yourself 6 or 7% quant minimum and the life roll. Don't skimp on the life roll. Try and get at least 40. We already have very little life. Now, it is only tier 3 maps, so we're not dying very often. But if we lost another 200 or 300 life, we would. Right? So we don't want to, we still do need the life rolls. So try and get at least 6 or 7% quantity, and then your resistances. Do not take negative rarity Venter's Gambles. Rarity is not nearly as important as quant. We would, in an ideal world, like to have both good quantity and good rarity, like this one, which is very nice. But this one I divined to myself, and I just expect that people will have something closer to a 6% quant one in this budget to make up for that. To make it even, my other one only has 2% quant, which I could easily get one this good or better with like 6% quant on it and have 6 on both. And then that would be the same, right? So because I divined this one myself and it's quite good, I got a really shit one to compensate for the good one so that we've got a roughly even what could average people expect rather than like no lifers with a lot of money. This incredibly cheap. Get one with at least 49% quant. Obviously 50 is better. Huge price point drop if you just take 49. Do try and get rarity. Again, rarity's nice. Quantity's better. Right, we can save money again on our Void Fletcher. People know that when you run chain, you don't want Pierce. Right? You want to get rid of Pierce. So what people are corrupting their Void Fletchers for is to get rid of the arrows pierce an additional target. The reality is you don't even notice one pierce. It does not screw you up in white maps. If we were a super endgame juiced farming things in tier 16s, it might matter. And maybe we would care then. Doesn't matter. You can save money there. The only roll we care about is the flat cold damage to attacks. That is it. So get one that's already pre-bricked, get one that's still got an additional arrow or has some garbage implicit that we don't care about, that is cheap with the highest damage roll. That's where we skimp more money there again. These are cheap as fuck, so doesn't matter. These are also relatively cheap, doesn't matter. I put my own enchant on it the one time I went to lab. It got whatever it got. Obviously, movement speed would be better. We can skimp again here. The common thing to do is to try and get Ellie Weak on hit Sedemas, and those are expensive. So I got some attack crit and 9% ones for 40 chaos instead of paying 8x for some Ellie Weak 10% ones. So we can skimp there. Still feels good. Helmet, I bought a base for 5C. I rolled 6 or 7 greed essences into it until it hit a rarity roll and then crafted rarity on top of it. That's it. That's all I got here. The whole rarity setup in the helmet it's not actually that important at all. We do like rarity. It is good, but you can skimp here. You do need the enchant. You do not need anything else. So you can fill up a lot more res here if you need to. You can forgo a life roll, but I'd rather not. Like I said, we are quite on the squishy side. Right. Links. Important. We're doing the Lightning Arrow, Ellie Damage, GMP, Inspiration, Trinity Chain thing. Now, Trinity is a lot of damage. Trinity support is a ton of damage, but I'm going to try and explain it in the easiest way that I can, because Trinity is the bit that's confused the most amount of people. So, Trinity, you gain damage in 3% more elemental damage per 5 of the lowest resonance, I think is that word, right? Supported skills deal 16%, penetrate 16% of elemental resistance, while each resonator is at least 25, etc, etc. The confusing part of this is we want all 3 bars to be full. So when you attack and the attack hits the highest damage type as cold, you will gain lightning and fire resonance. If it hits the highest one as fire, you will gain cold and lightning. If it hits the highest one as, you get the point, right? It always hits whatever hits the highest, the other 2 gain. So we need to be swapping between at least 2 elements relatively often, like preferably every second hit, but relatively often. So you can see my damage types. I have cold, lightning, and fire because I happen to run anger. Wrath would have been a better aura, but we couldn't afford the int requirement for it, so we ran anger. However, so when you attack, all different damage types are all separately rolled, even though it seems like they should all be rolled at once and like an equal percentage would be applied. That's not what happens. It is a separate roll for that 783 to 1600 cold. That roll happens. And then the lightning roll happens. And then the fire roll happens. I don't actually know what order. So the important part is that there is some overlap between your top 2. So I could very easily roll 200 lightning and 1000 cold, right? And then 900 fire. But I could also very easily roll 1600 cold, but 2000 lightning and 1200 fire. But you see that there's a bunch of combinations that could be one element higher than a different element, and it won't always be the same one. You'll run into Trinity support problems if you do things like you go too far in one direction. So like if my Windripper had added lightning, and then I also put an added lightning support in my links, and then I also ran Wrath, now we're getting to the point where the range of lightning is so high that it very rarely hits cold high. Now, it would anyway occasionally, because lightning is generally a very large range. So it's a lot easier to use Trinity with lightning, but if you just stacked only lightning on every possible thing, that eventually gets to a point where you're very rarely hitting with the other element as the high source, and then you encounter Trinity problems. It shouldn't be too much of a problem. You shouldn't have to worry about this at all. Frankly, if I was to put added cold or added lightning in right now, wouldn't notice, wouldn't make a difference. Trinity would still work. If I was to change my weapon from an added fire to an added anything else, also wouldn't matter, also wouldn't change anything. Trinity is very easy to keep up in this build. You just have to keep an eye on that you don't go in every single direction the same thing, right? So same thing, if I was to run Hatred because I had a Hatred crit watches I had to put in, and then I was to get added cold as my implicit, and then put added cold in my links as well, and then the implicit to the Void Fletch was more added cold on top of the added cold it's already got. Eventually it would stack to a point where cold is too high. We can't have that. Right. That is pretty much it. You now know the things you can skimp on. You now know the things you cannot skimp on, and how to run Trinity support. This has been incredibly good build to play at tier 3 maps. If you are happy to farm tier 3 maps, even as a super casual, like I said, we bought both inspired learnings out of 6 or 7 hours, and we have 2 nurses left over. We just farming nurses. By the way, didn't get a single exalt drop the whole time. Everyone else in my chat doing it, tons of exalts. Me, none. Still made tons of money. So it's fine. It's good. I'm already bored of running white maps, so I won't be continuing on with this character. I thought the inspired learnings would make me suddenly have a bunch of fun again, but I just want to be in red maps, so I'm already giving up on the MF thing after 1.5 days and having it make very good profit, but I'm done. I want to be in red maps. I can't do this. So we're going off to red maps. Keep an eye out. In a few days, we're going to have that harvest video out. We've got a whole bunch of slides for you. So if you want to know what to re-roll in all of your harvests as a more casual player, we're going to have quite an extensive list of what you should be using stuff on, if literally aimed at more casual people, not the min-max crafts and not the garbage roll it on maps. So keep an eye out for that. If you don't want to miss it, hit subscribe to the channel so you get notified of videos. Please also like and comment to feed the YouTube algorithm. I am BalorMage, and I will see everybody later.